Thank you guys so much for including us, especially the Hyde Park office, for selecting CDKL5. There we go. These are some of the faces of CDKL5. You probably have never even heard of CDKL5. I get a little emotional about talking about it because this one right here is my daughter. And, sorry. Katie is 8 years old. When she was born, I noticed that she was doing some strange things in the hospital, like staring at me. But it wasn't until she was 5 weeks old that I finally took her to the doctor because that staring started to look like she was holding her breath and her face was getting red. And at that point, we knew that what she was doing was actually having seizures. But CDKL5 is so rare that we didn't even have a diagnosis for her until she was 2. But so these are some of the faces of CDKL5. They all kind of vary. The one group right here is some of the kids from Cincinnati and the northern Kentucky area. So there's very few of them. My daughter's the one in the red dress. I always have to point her out. But did it go away? There you go. So the International Foundation for CDKL5 Research was founded in 2009, and that basically was a grassroots effort of just some of the parents who came together with kids who were diagnosed with CDKL5. Katie was diagnosed in 2010, and at that point there were only 250 kids worldwide that had been diagnosed with CDKL5. When we got the call, the neurologist called me and said, I really didn't think this is what she was going to have, but sure enough, she does have CDKL5. And it's so rare that it's just named after the gene that is mutated. And you can look it up. That's about as much information as I have. So that's what I was given when my daughter was 2 years old. Over 92% of the money that is raised goes into research. And so far, we've been able to commit over $2.5 million for research to date. And hopefully with your help, we can make that grow. The mission is to lead the way in finding a cure for treatments for CDKL5 disorder by funding global research efforts and increasing awareness of CDKL5. Overall, though, we want to enhance the quality of life for those that are affected by CDKL5 by providing information, programs, and services. Because it's so rare, they're not really sure how to even treat it. It's kind of a mix of different things like cerebral palsy, autism, epilepsy, Rett syndrome. So how do you treat it? You kind of have to just wing it. What is CDKL5 disorder? It's a rare genetic epilepsy that begins in the first few months of life. We don't know the cause yet for it or how to prevent it, but now on average about 1 to 2 children are diagnosed every week. So like I said, when Katie was diagnosed in 2010, there were about 250 kids worldwide. Now we're up to about 1,000. I think a lot of kids probably had been either misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. It affects mostly females. It's CDKL5 stands for cyclin-dependent kinase-like 5. Again, like I said, it's so rare, it's just named after that gene that's mutated. At one point they thought it was atypical Rett syndrome, but now they have decided that it is actually its own entity outside of Rett syndrome. It's both a gene and a protein located on the X chromosome, and that gene is essential for normal brain and neuron development and regulates the activity of other genes. So some of the symptoms, it's treatment-resistant seizures. So a lot of these kids are on multiple medications and have multiple seizures per day, even though they're on multiple medications. They're delayed in their cognitive and motor development, and most of the children, like my daughter, cannot walk, they cannot talk, they cannot feed themselves or care for themselves, and remain completely dependent on others for all aspects of their life. Some other signs and symptoms are hand movements, like you would see with autistic children, like the clapping or the flapping of their hands when they get excited, the absence or limited speech. Because they're non-mobile, they have a lot of GI issues and constipation, reflux, and a lot of the kiddos have feeding tubes. They have impaired sleep. Sometimes my daughter will stay up all night long and have parties in her crib. She'll just be sitting in there, clapping her hands, making noises and happy, and she'll be exhausted the next day, or she'll get through the school day, and then she'll sleep for 36 hours, where I just get her up enough to give her something to eat and drink, and she goes right back to sleep. They have impaired social interaction, obviously with the nonverbal aspect for it. Some of the treatments that are available are the anti-seizure medications, and like I said before, most of the children are on multiple medications. Fortunately, my daughter's just on one. We did something that was kind of a trial early on when she was about 8 months old, and we gave her ACTH injections, adrenal corticotropin hormone injections for 6 weeks, and fortunately that gave her some seizure-free periods. Right now, for years. Right now, she has just little jerks. Not enough to really medicate, but we do medicate a little bit just to see, because they have found that one of the anti-seizure medications has helped kids get a few words out. Unfortunately, she hasn't really had that happen, but we still give it to her anyway in hopes that maybe that will come. They have tried the ketogenic diet, surgery, and alternative medications to help control the seizures, like the medical marijuana is the newest one that they've been trying. Some of the therapies, there's a lot of different therapies to try and help these kids build their strength. It wasn't until Katie was 4 years old before she could sit by herself. So when your arms get tired of holding her, you would have to lay her down on the floor. And so that was never very good. Now she can at least sit by herself. But they have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, communication therapy, vision therapy, because they have cortical visual impairment. It affects their vision, and so it's almost like a blindness, maybe a little bit better peripheral vision, so my daughter will look a lot like this when she's trying to see or try and focus on something. The horse riding is great for their core strength. They have hippotherapy. And the aquatic therapy is the children just love being in the water because they have more mobility in the water, and they can do so much more. And then the one thing that Children's Hospital does do, but they only have one robot, is the robotic walking therapy, where the patients get strapped in there and can walk on the treadmill, and it can help with simulate walking to help maybe train the brain to be able to do that. There are a couple centers of excellence that we just started to pull together in the past couple years, and unfortunately none in Cincinnati, although Cincinnati has a great Rett syndrome clinic. I would love to eventually have a CDKL5 center of excellence there as well. Right now they have it in Denver, Boston, and Cleveland clinic, so fairly close, but not close enough. The purpose of the Centers of Excellence, obviously, is just to understand the clinical spectrum of CDKL5, to pull all the minds together, see all those children all in the same place so you can see the similarities and differences. The way it's affected differently on the gene in different areas, so all the children are pretty unique. Some of the things that they do that's similar, I think is funny, is they all cross their leg. And, you know, like if they're sitting in their chair, they'll either have their leg crossed like women do, or just like in a, you know, like that 4 shape with your leg all the way across. But so some of those things, they can see those things on a regular basis, and that way it helps with the diagnosis of the signs and symptoms to look for. And hopefully we can pull together for some more research. The daily life, like it says on there, there's no vacation from CDKL5 ever. It affects school life, home life, going out, traveling, doctor's appointments, therapies, and just the chronic illnesses that some of these kids have. Fortunately, Katie is very healthy. She doesn't have feeding tubes. She doesn't have a trach. She doesn't have a ventilator. Some of these kids are far extreme from what Katie is. She does suffer from constipation concerns and issues, the sleep issues, and again, she's nonverbal and she's, in a wheelchair. As far as for caregivers, again, there's no vacation from the worry and stress ever. It's all-consuming. It creates anxiety and anguish, guilt, depression, isolation, helplessness. I say isolation because, sometimes people don't know how to interact with you when, and they don't want to invite you over because you have somebody in a wheelchair, or you have, extra things and they're not comfortable. So you get the isolation and the helplessness, and many end up having to give up their work and their friends and their hobbies to care for their child. But there's hope. We have, ongoing research that we've been fortunate to be able to move forward with that. They created a mouse model to imitate some of the signs and symptoms of these children with CDKL5, like the clapping of the hands. The mouse actually did that. When you hung it by its tail, it would clap its hands. And so, yes, they're able to move forward with some clinical trials, and they did have some success in the mice in, reverting. And so hopefully we're going to be moving forward and doing it in children here soon. They funded 16 researchers in 5 countries and also in 4 continents. So this is my inspiration. This is Katie. She just recently received this bicycle right here through Building Blocks for Kids, another foundation who does fundraisers just to provide things for these kids with special needs. That's Katie. And then I thought I'd share with you this is Katie doing some of the aquatic therapy. In the middle, she's doing her hippotherapy, which is the horse therapy. And then the other one is the robot that they have at Cincinnati Children's. And hopefully someday they'll have more so we can do it more often. It's kind of once or twice a year. You can do it for a couple weeks, for a couple hours a day. And it's amazing because she can walk on the treadmill for 40 minutes. And then they take the robot part of it off of her, and then have her just walk on the treadmill for about 10 more minutes on her own without it. So it's really helpful, but unfortunately it's really hard to get into it. So I just want to thank you, and Katie says thank you as well for your support.